You Booked It, Episode 4. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world! I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainers 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to be a successful entertainer. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainers. We are here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating and review. And to show our appreciation for your, fingers crossed, 5-star rating and review, I will give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. And now, let's do this. Alrighty, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Elyse Renee. Are you ready for this, Elyse?
Do it.
All right. Elyse is a Las Vegas showgirl, dancer, and model. Since living in Las Vegas, she has had quite some success in the entertainment industry, from runways and nightclubs to being featured in major production shows up and down the Strip. Looking to the future with hopes that Vegas will make an epic comeback, she is focused on appreciating any opportunities that come her way, on stage and off. Elyse, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Fill in the gaps, who you are, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry.
Okay, well, as you heard, my name is Elyse, and I live in Las Vegas. I've been a working dancer and model here for about 11 years now, but originally I'm from Sydney, Australia. And I've been dancing my whole life. I started when I was about 3 years old, and when I was young, I was instantly addicted. I couldn't get enough of it. I was dancing 5 nights a week, doing competitions on weekends. And I loved it so much that I knew that I wanted to make it my career. Now, the people around me made it kind of clear that there wasn't really an industry for that in my hometown. So they kind of were like, well, if you really love it that much, you could be a dance teacher. And as a kid, I was like, oh, I love my dance teacher. Sure, I could be a dance teacher. And then as I got older, I was like, no, I want to perform. I want to be on stage. So I eventually got to talking to my dance teachers, and they were like, okay, I get it. But if you want to take that step, you're going to have to basically leave the country, go overseas, maybe Moulin Rouge or cruise ships. And I was like, bingo, cruise ships. So
Right.
yeah, so I was like 16 at the time, I think, and I found an audition for Carnival Cruise Lines. And I was like, sorry guys, I'm sorry parents. I'm gonna go to this audition. And I went and I had so much fun at the end, went back to school the next day, no big deal. And then I got a call offering me a contract. And I was like, yes, I'm gonna quit high school. I'm gonna go live my fate on the seven seas. And then eventually I was like, so what do I do about, getting permission from my parents? So I just, sign away life as a 16-year-old. They were like, oops, yeah, that's not gonna work for us. So thanks, sweetie. We have you on
Call
file.
us in 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, come to the audition in like 2 years and we'll figure something for you. So I was like, okay, back to school, graduated from high school. And then once I was 18, going back into the audition scene, because I already had that little taste. Like I was like, I can actually do this. and
Yeah.
I was at an audition, and an agent contacted me from that and offered me my first contract, which was a show in Taiwan. So I did that at 18, went to Taiwan. Pretty big jump for me from a small town in Australia. And then after that, they got me in contact with Carnival Cruise Lines again to do cruise ships, which I did for 2 years. And after that, I made my move to America, and I've been here in Vegas for 11 years now, and I've been working consistently ever since. So, mostly as a showgirl and a dancer, go-go, or in shows or corporate events, and then some modeling on the side. We're just a Jill of all trades over here in Vegas, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's move on to the next section here. And look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with our listeners?
Okay, I'm not so much a sucker for quotes, so I'm not sure if this technically qualifies. I'm not like this is a quote from so and so, but maybe it's an attitude, which works for me,
Yeah,
and that's turn a problem into an opportunity.
I love that. And can you expand on that a little bit about how that is applied in your daily life and your career?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I feel like this kind of attitude has been super helpful in my career. As entertainers, we work in a super competitive field, and even when we get the job, or sorry, when we're booked, our jobs are like contractual. So in 6 months, there'll be another audition, new people coming into town who are just as hungry or possibly even more talented. Or sorry, on the other hand, if you didn't get booked, then you have like another 6 months to work on what was holding you back for the next audition. So sometimes I would get the show on the first try, or sometimes I had to come back for second or third tries. And so in this kind of lifestyle, I feel like it's always you're trying to stay positive to grow, but be prepared for changes and challenges, to be flexible and adaptable. Because even if you have something, the situation can change, and you have to be prepared to work with that change to make it something that works for you. Or if you get denied, then you have to figure out how to grow, how to improve to make yourself right for that position or something else that will come along.
Absolutely. I love that. And let's get into this next section now. Elise, you are, of course, an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. And I think you'd agree that this entertainment industry is one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries in existence. And you know as well as I that to create and to have a successful career in this industry, like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, of course, yeah, there is an outrageous amount of fun and excitement being in those corporate events, being on stage as that entertainer, there are also our fair share of obstacles and challenges and failures we are going to experience and we're going to have to move forward through. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career? And how did you come out the other side better because of it?
Yeah, that's a good one to think about, and I feel like I have kind of a major make it or break it moment for me in my personal career, and that was the closing of the show Jubilee. Now, Jubilee was the quintessential showgirl show. It had been open for almost 35 years. It had a cast of 80 people with some of the most extravagant costumes and set you had ever seen. It was like the epitome of fabulous Las Vegas. And I adored being in the show. I'd been there for about 6 years when we were told that the show was going to close, and I was completely shocked. I was like, "I'm gonna be in this show forever. Easy peasy. I'm home. This is my the cast was my family. I'd been there for so long." And actually, you had been there too, so you're part of that Jubilee family as well.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, when we were told that the show was going to close forever, I was crushed. I was devastated, and we all were. It was like such a part of Vegas history. And so when the meeting where we were told ended, I called my husband and I was sobbing and I was so upset and I was scared that my career was over. And by the time I got home, he had set up my computer at the desk and he was like, "Okay, I know you're upset, but get to work. Work on your resume, update it, get a list of all the agencies you've ever worked for or agencies you haven't worked for yet. Reach out to everyone, do an email blast. Let's get some new headshots." Like, I just needed someone to snap me into that work mode and change
Yeah.
my mindset. And it was the best thing that he could have done for me because while I enjoyed the rest of my time closing out Jubilee and I savored every memory I could make for that last chunk of time, I was ready to go directly back out into the workforce and the gig life, and it was scary, but looking back, it was the best thing that could have happened to me because I was ready to stay in Jubilee for the rest of my career, and now looking back, Jubilee was just a small portion of it. It was just the beginning. I've grown and accomplished so much because that show closed. And it's so sad that it's gone, of course, but I needed that push to get out there and do bigger and better things for myself.
For sure. And absolutely, it is so difficult to go from, I've got my contract gig. I'm know exactly what I'm doing every single day, my schedule, the income, the everything, and then switching that mindset. It's a completely different mindset, isn't it? To go into the gig life and to go into the freelance life and to take that on.
Totally, like, that security net is gone, and it was just like a wake-up call that nothing lasts forever, and even when you have something, it can change or be taken away, and you have to be able to adapt.
Absolutely, especially in a market like Vegas where shows tend to come and go pretty quick because it's such an expensive city to produce anything.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's move on to this section and to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
Totally, totally. So, deep down, I think I've always known that I needed to be an entertainer, that I wanted to. Um, Getting my first contracts in Taiwan and on cruise ships were big steps for me because they got me out of the country and they got that taste of the spotlight. But um, when I told my agent that I was moving to America to work in Las Vegas, she literally laughed at me. She was like, "I know other girls who have tried and it's really hard and it never works out. They always come back." So um, I knew I had that just put that extra pressure on me that Vegas had to work. And
Right.
so when I got to Vegas and I got my contract at Jubilee and I was in rehearsal, I remember the moment so clearly. We were on stage on the sets for the first time in our opening positions, working out some blocking. And I just took a moment to like envision what it would be like when the curtain first came up on my opening night, what the crowd would feel like, that huge audience, being in those gorgeous costumes. And I still have that memory of not necessarily the actual opening night, but in rehearsal, thinking that I had actually made it to a real show in Las Vegas, in America, and I had done it, and I knew that I just needed to do everything I could to hold on to it for as long as I could.
Oh, I love that story. And you're right. The way that show kicked off was so good.
Absolutely. I still miss it so much.
Yeah, it's really a shame that that is no longer with us. Well, let's piggyback on that question and let's talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the auditions and callbacks, if that happened to be part of it. What was going on in your life? And what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
Booked it. Well, I think that every booked it moment is so, so sweet. But the sweetest for me is probably the one that was the hardest yet, and that was Zombie Burlesque. And Burlesque is a show like no other. It's, I guess, a comedy, musical, quirky storyline, and even a little bit of heart. It's difficult to describe, but
Yeah.
I guess I would just recommend people go see it when life comes back to normal. But anyway, so from the first time I saw it, I fell in love with it. It's just such a fun show, but the cast is small and the roles are very specific. And I knew that I would be right for one specific track, the tall girl role, and there were no openings for that specific spot. So every time I would go to the audition, I would make it to the final cut. I would come back the next day for the callbacks. And so I knew I was so close, but I had to keep going back and back and back until finally they called me to a private audition one time. It was just myself and one other dancer. I gave it absolutely everything I had, and in the end, they ended up hiring both of us. The other girl for the Adagio track and myself for the track that I always wanted. Even though they technically didn't need anyone for that position, um, I was just like a backup. And I worked my booty off once I got the job and there for 3 years. And I still love the show every second that I get to do it. And that perseverance was so totally worth it.
I love that. And let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And of course, we are amidst this global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
Well, I guess right now what I'm working on is just trying to work out. But I'm looking forward to the city coming back. I feel like it's going to take a while. I'm hoping that most shows will make a comeback when the time is right. I'm a little concerned for the survival of corporate events and nightclubs, things that rely so heavily on large gatherings. It's going to be interesting to see how um, we either work around or how long it takes to get back to a place where Vegas can thrive like it was. Um, but when we are back, I'll be back in the shows and hopefully doing gigs. But I really want to pour some focus into my very good friend's company, City Cats, which is run by Rebecca DeCadre. It's a highly developed all female cast of dancers, singers, musicians. They're mostly focused on corporate events, but we do full blown production shows as well. So I really hope that throughout this pandemic, maybe there's some like opening to really like grab some good gigs and make a name for themselves. So that's kind of what I'm rooting for coming out of this.
Fantastic. It is time to move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning round. I'm going to ask you a handful of questions, and I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, first question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
I would say location or limited work in my hometown.
Of course. And second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
When entering a new cast, especially one that already exists, keep your mouth shut and your ears open.
Oh, such sound advice. You only learned that the hard way, you know?
Yes.
Third question. What is something that is working for you now? Or if you'd like to go pre COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
I think it's important to have a positive attitude and to be go with the flow, flexible, just easygoing.
Absolutely. And the fourth question. What is the best resource, whether that is a book, a movie, a YouTube video, a podcast, maybe a piece of technology that you found is helping your career right now?
Right now, I have to say Instagram, but we in a little bit of time it'll be this new podcast. I think it's something about booking it.
We can only hope. Great. And how do you use Instagram?
I found that it's helpful to let the industry know that you're busy and you're busy because you're professional and you're good, if that makes sense. Like
For
it's just
sure.
like
Like you're using your Instagram as kind of a running resume.
yes, it's just a constant update of my work, my career.
For sure. And the fifth question. If you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
I think I would keep it the same. I'm so happy with the way everything has turned out and the place that I've gotten to. And while things were challenging, I think it's just all worked out for the best.
Love it. And the last question. What is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in the industry that you'd like to leave with everybody?
I would say work hard, but have fun and just make your dance captain slash supervisor's life easy. Basically, just do what you're told.
Fantastic advice. And to wrap this interview up, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
Okay, so when Entertainer Life returns, you can find me at Vegas' show and Zombie Burlesque. I'll be back at Marquee Nightclub at the Cosmopolitan, and I'll be working with City Cats for any upcoming projects they have. But for now, you can find me on Instagram at Elyse Renee _ Vegas.
Fantastic. Elise, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a pleasure to have you on.
I've had a lot of fun. Thanks for having me, Dane.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.